Hello, peeps, and welcome to Life Unscripted with Alex Kendall. On today's podcast, I'm sitting down with Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Why did I pick him to be my first guest? Well, he is the mayor of the city in which I live, and I had questions. We talk about everything from his life before politics, facing his critics, and about crime rates in the city. I sat down with him before the 5-year anniversary of George Floyd's death. Welcome to the Life Unscripted podcast. I'm Alex Kendall. I'm so happy to have you here today, and you found me. With me today is Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, and he has served as the mayor of Minneapolis since 2018, and he is running for a third term. And thank you so much for joining me on my very first episode of the podcast.
The first one. Let's kick this thing off with a spark, right?
Okay, so before we get down to business and, talking about what you want to do for the city if you are elected again. For people that maybe don't know you, I was kind of doing a little digging into your life before politics. So you were raised outside of Washington, D.C., and I read this on social media recently where both your parents were professional ballet dancers.
They were.
What was your house like? What was it like growing up in that house?
So both of my parents danced professionally for first the Lubavitch Company in New York City. My mother is from Queens. My father is from Baltimore. And then my father got a contract with the Netherlands Dance Theater, which is kind of the premier dance company in the entire world. He was big time. They both were big time. And my father was on the cover of Dance Magazine and Dancers Magazine. And then at some point he hurt his back, and a chiropractor in Belgium fixed him up. And so he decided that, hey, my dance career was coming to an end, which at the time was like 27 years old. Now dancers go much longer into their 30s. And he decided to move back to the States, become a chiropractor, and then opened a business, a chiropractic office just outside of Washington, D.C. And then they treated a number of these dance companies that came through the Kennedy Center and other spots in Washington, D.C. And my mom has managed the business. My dad was the chiropractor. They ran that for the next 43 years until this last January. And so they just retired and closed the thing down. And so that's kind of how I grew up in a very dancer's artistic world. I'm kind of the only person in my family that is not an artist. Okay.
So you graduated from the College of William and Mary, and this was on a track and field scholarship, which was another interesting little nugget. And you became a professional distance runner.
Right.
Also member of Team USA at the Pan American Games 2007. How'd you do?
I finished 4th place. I obviously did not go down the dancer's route. I became very passionate about running from a fairly early age. What I loved about running is this beautiful direct correlation between hard work and success. If you work harder than the other person you're standing next to on the starting line, you're probably going to win. And I found that to be so exciting. I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to train every single day. I'm going to have the kind of grit and perseverance that is going to put me into tip-top shape and hopefully better than the other guys on the line, and I'll beat them. And so I got a scholarship to attend William and Mary. I then moved out to an Olympic development program just outside of Detroit. I did that for a little bit, and what happened is I got bored. When you're doing this professional running thing, you're basically running, You're eating, you're sleeping, and that's about it. And so I started to get involved in different social justice activities. I started to get intrigued by the law, and I was finding that a lot of the people I wanted to help, I couldn't because I didn't understand the law. So I enrolled in law school, moved back to the East Coast and went to Villanova. And I continued to do the running thing to pay for living expenses. So I'd run races around the country. One of the races I ran was the Twin Cities Marathon.
I was going to ask, how was it that you ended up here?
That my first time in Minneapolis was to run the Twin Cities Marathon. And I remember being around mile 15, right around Lake Nokomis, when the guy that I was racing, it was a fierce competition. It was the United States Championships. It was a qualifier for the World Championships and the Pan American Games. And the guy I was racing with looks to me and says, "This is a beautiful city." And I remember thinking to myself, I could totally see myself living here. And lo and behold, I qualified for the Pan American Games. I'm racing down there. And on the way from the Olympic Village to the training site, this is in Rio, Brazil, I meet another woman who's on Team USA. And she tells me, my dad is a real estate attorney out in Minneapolis. And at the time, I was in the process of interviewing for jobs. My running career was probably coming to an end. I had achieved my dream anyway of running for Team USA. And I said, why don't you give me your dad's number? Maybe I get an interview. And I got an interview. And I got a job. And I moved my life across the country and started working and started a life here in Minneapolis.
So speaking of, we know Minneapolis has been in the national news and has had some pretty tough times. We know, of course, all cities had to deal with the pandemic.
Sure.
But for us here, a civil unrest after the George Floyd murder when Officer Derek Chauvin kneeled on his neck and said those devastating words that I can't breathe before he died. And we know Chauvin was convicted. He was found guilty, and he's serving 22 and a half years in prison. We have heard calls from President Trump to issue him, he's considering a pardon for Derek Chauvin. And the anniversary of George Floyd's death is coming up on May 25th. Where does that stand? And also, are you concerned at all about perhaps people getting pretty riled up if, in fact, that were to happen?
Well, first, I believe the most recent reports from the White House are that they are not considering a pardon. But if they did, to be clear, it would be entirely performative. It would change literally nothing other than the location in which Derek Chauvin was incarcerated. If you provide a federal pardon, it would mean that Derek Chauvin would leave the federal prison, but there's still a state sentence and conviction. So all this would mean is he would move into a state prison and continue to serve his time. And so as far as any move goes that would do something like that, it would be entirely performative and somewhat pathetic in that, the whole narrative from the Trump administration is law and order. Well, this is law and this is order. He was convicted by a jury of peers. There was a sentence. And like I said, if he were to move forward with this pardon, which obviously that is one of the presidential authorities, it would have no impact whatsoever. Okay.
The president has also spoke about the handling of the 2020 unrest and also pulling federal funding for sanctuary cities, which, of course, Minneapolis is one of them. Are we seeing an effect of that, or do you expect that to happen, the funding being taken away from the city?
We don't know. The definition of a sanctuary city is somewhat amorphous. According to the Trump administration, they are going to make a determination over the next, 20 or so days as to which cities constitute sanctuary cities and which do not. What we have in Minneapolis is a separation ordinance. And what that says is that our police, our public officials are not to ask the question as to whether an individual is documented or not. And because we haven't asked the question, we haven't gathered any information. And because we haven't gathered any information, if Donald Trump or anybody else for that matter asks us to provide all your information on undocumented immigrants, our first answer is pretty simple. We don't have any. Now, moreover, though, apart from that separation ordinance, I am in charge of the commissioner, who's in charge of the chief, who's in charge of the Minneapolis Police Department. The Minneapolis Police Department and all of our safety infrastructure reports up to me. And so we have an obligation to keep people safe. In doing so, we prioritize. And this is not just with undocumented immigrant-related issues. This is with everything. You prioritize to make sure that our officers are handling first the most violent crimes. We're preventing shootings from happening. We're arresting the perpetrators of violent crimes. We're catching serial killers. We're catching murderers. That's what we do, And you stop carjackings, you prevent assaults, you do all this other stuff. I don't want our police officers focusing on the dad who just dropped his kid off at daycare, who's about to go in and work a long day, who happens to be from Ecuador. I don't want them hunting down undocumented immigrants that otherwise haven't done anything wrong. There's no threat to safety there. I want them focusing on violent crime. Why? Keeps people safe.
A lot of immigrants are concerned about, for instance, the idea that ICE can come here to this city and essentially take them away with no due process and kick them out of the country. And so to protect the immigrants here, you're saying, okay, so it's not a priority for Minneapolis, but how would you deal with something like that, ICE coming in?
We don't deal with ICE coming in. We don't coordinate with ICE in that fashion. And so, look, I'm not someone who's going to overpromise and underdeliver. I understand the concern about ICE coming in and taking somebody without due process. So to the extent there is that concern, I get it. And you got a team here in the city of Minneapolis that loves you and that'll work with you. In Minneapolis, it's not like illegal aliens. These are our neighbors. We love them. We're going to stand with them. We'll stand up for them. Again, we have a prioritization as to what we're dealing with. And where we're going to contribute our resources is not immigration. That's just that's not our deal.
All right. Now, 3 years ago, we're moving on to Minneapolis residents. They voted to give more power to your position as the mayor. And there has been a coalition of some of your critics that have been able to get the votes to block some of your agenda. There was an Axios report in February of 2025 where you've been at odds with some of the more progressive sides of the city council. How is that relationship? Describe where that's at. And some of them feel that you were unwilling to compromise in some areas.
Well, I would just say simply, let's look at the facts. First, we need to be working together. I believe in compromise. I believe in collaboration. I don't insist that everybody agrees with me all the time. I know that they won't, and there is a necessary check and balance between any executive branch and any legislature. And look at the facts. Almost all of the vetoes that I've had to conduct have been in the last year. What changed over the last year? It's a new city council. I've had several city councils. We've worked with them. Yeah, agreed, sometimes disagreed, but we often, usually, the vast majority of the time, manage to find some common ground. The truth is that, yeah, this is a substantially DSA, or Democratic Socialist, council. And
the city budget was one of the areas where
it was.
Some people were upset that they felt that, they wanted it to pass, and then you vetoed.
Yeah,
that.
And I stand by that. Look,
what was it about the budget?
I'm not going to abdicate my responsibility to do what is right for the city. They set a record with the number of amendments that they passed. They cut basic city services and then took that money and doled it out to a number of nonprofits throughout the city. They cut things that we need to do, things like turning on the lights on the street lights. They cut things like filling potholes. They cut things like police recruitment. They literally cut our entire campaign to bring on more police, and we have fewer officers per capita than any major city in the country. And then they gave that money, by and large, to nonprofits. Now, that doesn't mean that those nonprofits are bad, and you've probably donated to some of them. I've donated to some. They're benevolent. But that's not our first job and responsibility. Not to mention, they added dramatically to the budget. They spent way more money, which will ultimately cost the taxpayers more, and did not make sense. I have been through, up to that point, something like 11 budgets, both as a council member and as mayor. I have voted for and or signed every single one of them until this year. But I think that the budget they passed was entirely irresponsible. And yeah, we did try to compromise. They started with about 82 amendments to the budget, which, by the way, is a record. And you know how many amendments they ended with? Like 82. And so, there was room for us to compromise. We wanted to find a plan. Here's just the truth, and you can check the record on it. They didn't want to, and they had the votes, to their credit. Look, yeah, they had the votes. And so I'm not going to abdicate my responsibility to the city to do the right thing, but I'm not going to sign on to a path that I know is bad for Minneapolis.
All right, let's talk about people losing their faith in government for a number of years. Not surprisingly, right now, Democrats make the bulk of the population that is upset, that there is a conservative kind of a wave that is looming over the country. How do you, while you're on the campaign trail, that is something you probably have to deal with on a very regular basis. How do you keep, I guess, Democrats, you are one, how do you keep them engaged right now?
Well, I think people lose trust when decisions are made not based in the best interest of people and of the city, but are made for the sake of politics. And let's be real, I do see a gravitational pull to the extremes on both sides right now. It's very real on both sides. And what we need more of is people that have the courage to tell their own side what they don't want to hear, which is a difficult thing to do. We need more Republicans standing up to Donald Trump and saying, this is fascism at its worst. You are doing things that are quite literally unconstitutional, that are against the law, whether it's January 6th or it's the withholding of federal dollars that have already been allocated. It's wrong. People need to have the guts to say it's wrong, not just on the Democratic side. It's very easy for me to say it's wrong, very easy. It's harder for Republicans. We need more Republicans that have the guts to say it's wrong. Now, similarly, on our side, we need to tell the extreme on the left what they don't want to hear at times. And I've heard a number of people, city council and beyond, saying, well, Donald Trump's in office. We need to counter Donald Trump by going as hard left as we possibly can. That's not the way to do it. The opposite of extremism is not the opposite extreme. The opposite of extremism is good, thoughtful governance where you listen to data, you follow what the experts are saying, and you love your city more than your ideology.
You had a State of the City address, and you threw out a lot of statistics that show violent crime is down in the city. Minneapolis Police Department applications are up. Let's talk about what's going on there.
We are making some serious progress right now. We nearly set a record for the longest period of time without a homicide this year. We are seeing carjackings down, violent crime down, shootings down. Virtually every category, we are seeing progress. Now, to be very clear, that does not mean we are where we need to be. That doesn't mean that we're taking a victory lap and sitting on our hands. We need to do more work. We need to do even better to drive down crime where everybody both has the reality and the perception of safety. And we also know that the progress that we've made is fragile. While we have made a lot of progress this year, just a couple weeks ago, we had a series of shootings and homicides, all in this period of like a couple of days. It was a horrible week. And so that progress is fragile. So what it says is we need to keep our nose to the grindstone. We need to be doing the work to, yes, add more police officers. And we're seeing a huge increase, 135%.
135%?
Yeah, police applications are up 135%. We're seeing more police officers apply to the department, more laterals come in, more community safety officers that are also in the pipeline to become officers.
Why do you think that is? Why? I mean, when you think about just deciding to become a police officer, why do you think the applications are up so much right now?
There's a number of factors. I think the biggest one, though, is that the officers that are coming in now they want to be part of the change. They want to get in at the ground level of something really special that is happening. They want to be an example for so many others to follow. And yeah, they also want to be heroes. It is an honorable profession. You do this right, this is an honorable profession. You get to protect and serve the communities that you love, that you're committed to. And if you grew up on the north side or the south side for that matter, and you're thinking to yourself, hey, I want to give back as much as I possibly can to the neighborhood that raised me, what better way to do it than to say, you know what, I'm going to do true community-oriented policing where we're working directly with the people that raised me, the moms on the block, and the coach that coaches basketball. We're going to work directly with them to try to keep crime down. That's a beautiful thing. Anyway, they're committed to it. They're coming in. The police department is more diverse than it's ever been before on a per capita basis. And we are seeing more people that are really invested in the city, which people have been asking for that for years. And I'm proud to say now it's happening.
And our 911 system is, I know for a while there were some problems there. It is better. It's been improved.
Better also. I mean, what we're talking about here, whether it's police officers or 911 dispatchers, these can be traumatic jobs. 911, these are the first responders of the first responders. And they are encountering someone on the other end of the line that is in like their worst position that they will maybe ever have in their lives. And they got to be compassionate. They got to quickly take down information. They got to direct officers where to go and what might be on the premises when they get there. Not an easy job, And you may be talking to somebody that is in a life or death situation. And so, yeah, we had some serious attrition, both from the police department and from 911 dispatchers. And we're finally at a place now where, we're pretty much full in terms of the 911 dispatchers. We're where we need to be, and we're going to continue on that trajectory.
All right. A few more things. Some of your main priorities, increasing access to affordable housing. Mm-hmm. How is that progress going, especially for people who perhaps live near downtown, the city, the north side? What are some of the areas that you feel you've made progress, and where do we still need some work?
This is an area where we have made more progress than probably anywhere else. It's an area also where we are leading the nation. When you pick your head up from, the local morass of politics and everything here, we are recognized nationally as the leading housing city in the country, like literally number one. We are producing 8.5 times the amount of deeply affordable housing since before I took office, 8.5 times. We've managed to keep rents down more than virtually any city in the entire country. We're either 1, 2, or 3, depending on which analysis you're looking at, but we're right there. And the policies that we have enacted are now being copied, or at least people are attempting to copy them around the country. So much so that the former head of HUD, Housing and Urban Development at the federal level, was like, hey, Minneapolis is the one that's getting it done. And so, we are seeing some great progress there. We're one of the few cities in the entire country to see homelessness drop, unsheltered homelessness drop, in some cases very dramatically. And so that doesn't mean we're there, once again,
I've been apartment hunting with my daughter recently, and we went to see quite a few apartments, so I'm aware of a little bit of what's happening out there in the rental space. Yeah. Climate change is also something that is also top of your agenda. What are some of the initiatives that are happening right now?
Increasingly, climate change is something that cities need to tackle, and I think we have a role to play. We recently enacted what is called our Climate Legacy Initiative, which is a program where we take the franchise fees from our utilities, Xcel and CenterPoint, somewhere in the range of $6 to $11 million a year, and we put that money directly into climate resilient programming. Some of that is our green cost share programming, which reduces pollution from some of these businesses. Some of it goes to weatherization of homes. So you go to a lower income neighborhood that has a cross section of both poverty and pollution, and you say, hey, we can weatherize your home, both reduce the amount of carbon you're producing and keep your energy bills down at the same time. It's a win-win-win. And so this is work that we're rolling out right now. And also, if you really want to do good by the climate, move to a great city. Seriously. I mean, the fact that you live in Minneapolis makes you more climate friendly, makes you reduce your per capita carbon output simply by the fact that the things that you need to get done in your life are closer to where you are. And whether that's going to the grocery store, riding your bike down to get a sandwich or a cup of coffee, or that's just the way that homes are heated, it makes more sense in terms of a climate resilience impact to live in a city. And so we want more people to be able to do that.
I like living in a city. I like being able to go to my grocery store, to go to my pharmacy, and it means something to me to be able to do that and being born and raised here in the city. All right, so you have one daughter, and you have another one on the way this summer in July. Okay, so are you going to take some time off because you are on the campaign trail?
You know, I think we'll just take her along for the ride. Well, obviously, Sarah comes first. You know, when she's about to have the baby, it doesn't matter what I'm doing on the campaign trail. This is like not a hesitation. This is not an option. I'm with Sarah. Now, after we have the baby and everybody's healthy and everybody's good, you know, I'm sure I can. We haven't quite worked out who gets which kid or how this is handled yet.
It'll be a new experience.
But
it
will be a new experience. And I mean, at this point, Frida, our 4.5-year-old, has probably been to more political events than like a ward boss. So she's well adept at handling sort of social situations like that. And you figure it out. It'll be just fine, you know. Life happens and you maneuver. You keep going.
Good education for her.
That's right.
Well, Mayor Frey, it was a pleasure having you on my very first episode of Life Unscripted. I'm so happy to have you here. And good luck for the rest of the year and with the new baby coming.
Well, this is awesome. And let me just put in a plug for you that is unsolicited. To be able to talk about these issues in longer form is of such critical importance. And you are extremely adept at handling them, at asking both the tough questions, but also kind of getting a lot a bit deeper than that surface level conversation that so often dominates media. So I just thank you for that. You're doing the right thing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.